You're listening to Talk of Champions, an Ole Miss Spirit podcast with Ben Garrett.
It's time! It's time! It's time! It's time! It's time!
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Flagship, an Ole Miss Spirit Recruiting podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Ben Garrett is off today, kicking things off, spring break week with Ole Miss now, and we've got a lot to get to on this pod. So really excited to have you along for the ride with us. Just got back from New Orleans, where Under Armour held its first regional camp in quite some time, and man, did it pay off for Under Armour as they had an elite group of talent, especially the offensive and defensive lines, just a really special group. And anytime you get into New Orleans for that camp setting, those players, they turn out, and they come from Houston, they come from Mississippi, they come from Louisiana, they come from Alabama. And it was a really, really good group. I was interested to see what the crew would be like. 7-on-7 is in full swing right now for those of you who follow recruiting religiously. This is that time of year where players are out, they're working out, and they're getting out there to make a name for themselves. And there were quite a few prospects who really cemented their status on the radar as a high-level prospect this weekend. And there are also some that really broke out and caught our eye. So I'm going to run down a lot of the Under Armour takeaways for me on the show. We'll also talk about Ole Miss targeting a grad transfer defensive back. An offer went out on Friday, so big news out of Oxford as they're going after a defensive back. Not surprising, but the timing, of course, with the spring portal window still about a month away was interesting to say the least. But first, want to remind you guys that we are presented by our friends at StatusJet. Go to statusjet.com, find out all their options they have for you. It's a unique sponsor for us, of course, with the private jet company, but talk to your friends, talk to your family, see if it makes sense from a business perspective for you. And when you mention Ole Miss Spirit, you get a discount on a round trip flight. So maybe that helps out. Maybe that makes it make a little bit more sense for you, whether you want to go check out the Rebels on the road in baseball, whether you want to plan your last minute trip to the SEC tournament for basketball, or final, NCAA tournament opportunities. Those are all there. And StatusJet is going to help us fly our Ole Miss Spirit supporters around as you guys just have the conversation with them, see if it makes sense for you. So go to statusjet.com to learn more. All right. Under Armour New Orleans was quite the scene on the offensive and defensive lines, like I said in the opening. And, over at the Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com, part of On3, you could sign up for just $1 to read the full camp takeaways, top performers. Got over 30 interviews from that camp, which, for those of you who obviously don't necessarily know what it's like for us on the media side of things, those camps are incredibly hit or miss in a sense. You can go there and they can have a ton of talent, and the way an interview might play out, you might miss some of your top guys that you also want to talk to by talking to another top guy. And to come away with 30 interviews is a great trip for us in the industry. So it just speaks to the amount of Ole Miss recruiting talent that was out there as well. A lot of Mississippi sleepers, a lot of younger Mississippi talent showing out in New Orleans. And all those takeaways, for the most part, are on Ole Miss Spirit right now. And we'll have a lot more throughout the week. I mean, it's one of those that it's going to take a minute to get through all the interviews, but got some big updates out of it. And so want to kind of touch on some of those. And again, you can read more in-depth scoop at Ole Miss Spirit, omspirit.com. But let's jump into it, okay? The top performers of the day. And one of them, a non-Ole Miss target, a prospect who has been on the radar for quite some time. And that's Lamar Brown, a five-star offensive lineman, defensive lineman out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He's got a top four of Miami, Florida State, LSU, and Texas A&M. But the thing about him is, I would say there's a good chance he stays in the SEC at LSU or A&M, but he wants to play defensive line. But I can tell you his best position, and it's been like this for a minute now, is probably offensive line. I mean, he was dominant playing against some of those defensive linemen. And he was switching sides and making it happen on both sides of the ball. So just want to give him a shout out. He was my offensive MVP of the whole camp. But when you flip over the defensive side of the ball, this was a group that had, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm flashing up their profiles for On 3. This is a group that, as you run down the list, included Nolan Wilson, a guy who's in 5-star range for On 3. Jaraylin McCoy, another standout in Mississippi. You have Corey Wells, who's blowing up on the recruiting trail. You have Lamar Brown, we just talked about. You have Dylan Berryman, who's really good and out of Louisiana. Richard Anderson, the number 1 player in Louisiana. He's an LSU commit. The list kind of goes on. Darius McKinley. I mean, this defensive line group, and in particular the defensive tackle position, was outstanding. But the man who really, in my opinion, shined, and I always try to, when I pick top performers or when I evaluate a camp, I want to see guys who take tons of reps, and then I want to see them perform in those reps. So Darion Albert out of Jackson Academy in Mississippi, you see him on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. He's right now ranked as kind of a middle 3-star for On 3. But I tell you what, he is somebody that I feel like is going to be a very good college football player. And the NFL is starting to go toward a little bit of that, shorter defensive tackles having a lot of success. And he isn't, 6 foot or 5'11" or anything of those. He's 6'2". He was really strong. These camps are sometimes tough for these defensive tackles in a sense because, they don't want you to bull rush. They want to keep people safe and things like that. But Darion Albert was outstanding. He made a lot of plays and really was able to show off some really nice movement. If you're watching on YouTube, I shot a couple clips for you guys, and we'll be dropping those as I kind of get through the tape on the Ole Miss Spirit YouTube. But you see here in the one-on-ones, just that first move right there, really, really nice. You can see the power exploding, getting to the quarterback, and getting held on one of the reps as well. So he had a really strong day. I was really impressed with him. I think he's a stock-up guy. And look, unfortunately for Ole Miss, they are kind of going to have to play catch-up here. But that speaks to, again, the depth of this defensive line class, especially in Mississippi, is just outstanding. They have it all, it seems like, at that position. And we're going to spend a lot of time on these defensive linemen because they were that good. And a man that has really blown up, you've seen him move up into that strong 3-star position was Corey Wells out of Mississippi. He's really blown up this spring. He told me he checked in at about 6'5", 300 pounds. And I told him I wish I carried 220 or so, as well as he carries 300. So a really, really good-looking prospect on the defensive line, and he had a lot of success in his one-on-ones. He was able to show a lot of, I think, positive upside on the movement side of things. Ole Miss is right there for him. You've got Alabama. You've got some other programs that are pressing for him. We'll have a full story up from Corey Wells on the site here, but he's a top 40 defensive tackle in the country for On 3. You see 24/7 has him up inside the 200 range overall. I think On 3, I would say, I don't want to speak for the rankings team, but he's got my vote to be a stock-up guy into the On 300 because he just carries it so well. He moves around really well. And sometimes in these camps, and this is the interesting thing about it, you have to be able to say, and we'll talk about this in a second with Nolan Wilson, but you have to say who's done these drills before. Like when we were in Dallas, seeing the Under Armour Dallas camp and seeing some targets, that's a group that is generally pretty well coached, pretty well developed in the camp setting. None of those kids are strangers to the drills that they're having them do. What you want to see sometimes in these camp settings is kids who don't do these drills, don't do these pass rush drills, don't do anything with the bags or what have you. You want to see them kind of figure it out a little bit as camp goes on and know that, okay, they're flashing the right amount of upside and athleticism. And I feel like that encapsulated Corey Wells' day really well. I think that, I guess, was a little bit of a pat on the back. But, you have to really watch him, develop his sense of comfort in these drills, and he did that, and then was able to get some wins on the pass rushing side of things. He was able to finish in the showcase group on the defensive line, which is really what you want. You want the top guys in the camp to end up being called out at the end to be in the showcase, to get the final 5 and things like that. And that's what Corey Wells was in there. So thought he had a really good day at camp, and stock up guy for me in terms of our ranking at On3. I think he should be moved up a little bit there. Now, Nolan Wilson is a guy we're incredibly high on when it comes to On3. I mean, we have him, if the rankings ended today, he would be a 5-star prospect. And he is another example of that type of development that needs to happen in terms of the drills. You could see him this is before they really got going, getting in some extra reps, kind of doing some things there just in slow motion to get comfortable. But then you see his movement, and there were a couple drills, and you'll see one here in a second where he kind of keeps his hand up because he's not sure what to do, but he just really has nice bend, and you see right there as just held the hand up the whole way. But he's really a intriguing pass rusher, and his body, I feel like, can bend so well, and that's what you want from an edge rusher. And Randall Joyner is extremely high on him. Nolan Wilson is, I mean, on the defensive line, probably one of the top, if not the top target for Ole Miss to get done in the class of 2026. And he told me Ole Miss is in contact every day. So he's got some official visits set. He's a really, really talented prospect who is only going to continue to grow. He's beginning to get well traveled on these camp, and he was at the Under Armour All-American game as a junior. He's beginning to get well traveled, which should serve him really well as he gets into his college career, and I think, or the rest of his high school career, and he'll be able to develop even more and really be able to back up all of that talent and potential that he has. It was on display Sunday in New Orleans for Nolan Wilson. So huge target there for Ole Miss, and one that they're certainly going to be ready to impress whenever he gets back to Oxford. Do want to remind you guys as well about our friends at Rhoback. Rhoback.com. You can head over to their website to see their complete collection of polos, quarter zips, hoodies, joggers, shorts. It's a great company. I love their polos. I mean, I probably have a half dozen already, and we've been working with them for just under a year now. But you can get the Mississippi, that powder blue. The baseball team got theirs, so you might as well pick up yours and use code Ole Miss 20 for 20% off your order at Rhoback.com. That's RHOBACK.com for 20% off your first order. Use code Ole Miss 20. We continue on here, and I could spend all day talking about the defensive line, and I'll certainly do that on Ole Miss Spirit, ohmspirit.com. You can sign up for just $1 to join us. But I do want to flip over to the offensive line, and this is a group that also in its own right had some top talent, and it was really nice to get around some of these players and get to know them. And that's what I like about the camp setting and camps like this, where there is a lot of Mississippi prospects, a lot of Mississippi flavor out there, and the guys really had a good camaraderie. Sometimes these camps are, I think you can see a little bit of a true nastiness about them, because the guys are, I mean, the competition's flowing, the blood's going, things like that. But in this one, and maybe it was the fog for the early morning offensive defense line session, but these guys really, I felt like had each other's respect. And Donnell Robinson is a stock up guy for me on the offensive line. I felt like he really showed his ability to anchor well along the interior and show why he's one of the best offensive guards in the country, one of the best in Mississippi, without a doubt. And you can see why Ole Miss is so high on him, and they're pushing for him and all of those things. So he's ranked just on the edge of being a 4-star on the On3 industry ranking. I would love to see On3 come up a little bit on its ranking, our ranking of him after his performance against some top defensive linemen. Again, these are guys that, this is another interesting thing with camps. you look at somebody like Donnell Robinson, who has size, has some strength, but he's not a finished product as far as where his body is going to be as a interior offensive lineman. He is going to develop. He is going to add mass and size and strength. And that is where, I mean, this defensive tackle group, I mentioned it, Dylan Berryman, Richard Anderson, Darion Albert, Corey Wells. These are all guys with intense size and like true weight. And a defensive line coach I know likes to use the word girth. They have a lot of girth, and it's hard to, in these camp settings, for offensive linemen, in a sense, along the interior, kind of compete with that sometimes when you're not that developed. Like, you are somebody who's going to add weight in college. These guys on the defensive tackle position that they faced on Sunday, a lot of them are just going to be, I mean, kind of plug in and play overall at the position. And that's where these guys are at. But so Donnell had a really nice day. I felt like he moved laterally very, very well. And, one guy as well on the offensive line that I felt like stood out, and we'll get his updated picture. You'll see it. It's actually on the thumbnail for this. And I tweeted out a kind of like collage of pictures from the camp for our top performer story. But man, Bryson Cooley out of West Jones in Laurel was really physically impressive. I mean, I compared him to Emory Jones, who I covered at LSU. His shoulders just so wide. You knew that like he is so physically developed already, but he can kind of trim his body in the right direction a little bit. But he's so wide, like it's going to be difficult for opposing defensive linemen, whether it be linemen or edge rushers, because he could maybe play both, to get around him because he's just so wide in a good way. Like he looks the part of somebody who could physically step in right away. Kind of reminds me of Devin Harper, who Ole Miss signed out of Louisiana last year, but just a really, really soft-spoken, nice young man. Really enjoyed getting to spend some time with him. He just seemed like he really has things together. And Ole Miss is certainly pushing for him in a big way. A couple more guys I want to shout out. Mitchell Smith out of Picayune Memorial, a teammate of Nolan Wilson, had a solid day. I think he's an intriguing prospect. He is big. I would be really interested to see what he measured in at, because he looks all of 6'5" out there, and just a really big prospect overall. And he's got a chance to be a really good player at the next level, multi-year starter. I think maybe a touch more developmental, just to kind of improve some lateral quickness. But I thought he had a good day. Didn't get a chance to talk to him. He was ready to get out of there, it seemed like, but did want to give him a shout out for showing up and competing. He was solid. And then Hayden Ainsworth as well was out there from Biloxi. He recently reclassified from 2027 to 2026. Ole Miss is right there. Nebraska, Alabama, other programs are involved with him, and he had a solid showing out there. Really looks one, very, very smart, and offensive linemen, believe it or not, sometimes it's you can get by with pure athletic talent and things like that, but you also have to be smart, and you have to be able to see the game, read the game, and figure it out on the field with the mental side of it. And Hayden Ainsworth is 4.0. That's why he was able to reclass. He's really, really impressive. I mean, he could be a starting center, I think, just with his smarts, and he's got good size. So really was impressed with him as well. So he's got a bright future. He's young, and he'll get in there at some point wherever he goes to play his college football and have a chance to develop, take his time, do all of those things as well. So really, really good group. Could go on. There's some other prospects that impressed me on the offensive line and defensive line as well. But we'll have to follow all of that at Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com. So check us out for just $1 for your first week to join us and get the recruiting scoop, get some more thoughts on these players and things like that. But let's talk about some skill position players, shall we? I think this is a good group overall that was out there. I think getting a chance to spend some time getting to know these players is really it's a good thing. I mean, because when you're trying, and I'm not on our rankings team, but when you're trying to get a feel for how these guys are as players, you want to also understand their mindset, also understand why they feel a certain way, or why they want to go somewhere, or what they need to improve on, or what have you. And I really came away impressed with Demarius Yates. And this is not a camp setting that is necessarily his bread and butter. He is listed at 5'10", 180, but he looks more put together than that. And you have somebody who really has a chance to be, I think, an every down back. He had his moments catching the ball, but he really impressed me with his ability to move around out there and make things happen. And I think that's what you want. You want to see where these guys are athletically and see them put it all together on the football field. And that's what I saw from Demarius Yates, just physically. He's a top 150 prospect for on three, on the cusp of being a top 10 running back in the country. And if he continues to develop, catching the football, get a little bit more comfortable, that's going to be really special. That combination of what he brings to the table. Ole Miss is sitting there in a great spot. Alabama and Florida State are recruiting him really hard, he told me. So he's got a good group. He is going to take an official visit this summer to Ole Miss, and he's got some other trips lined up for the spring. Things are going in the right direction. He's a former Mississippi State commit. He's out of Kemper County. And if there's one, I'm trying to think, but like if there's one on 3 RPM pick that I feel like I'm on the verge of making, it's probably Demarius Yates after talking with him. So keep a close eye on him as things will heat up for him on the recruiting trail in the near future. Another player that stood out just with his size and kind of frame is Xavier McDonald, 4-star prospect out of Morton, Mississippi, almost top 100 prospect, top 15 wide receiver on the on-3 industry ranking. I think the biggest thing with Xavier McDonald is just continuing. And I think as someone who is a little bit more slight of build, like he has some, I mean, if he can, he needs to add a little bit more weight. I think that would help him in his confidence at the receiver position, just being able to be a little bit more physical, be a little bit more of a bully out there. But his athletic traits, being able to jump, go get it, I thought he separated really well in the camp in the moments that I saw him. And the wide receiver, for those of you who haven't been out to these Under Armour camps, the wide receiver DB position is probably the hardest position to watch. And it's kind of crazy because you have all this talent and then they divide it. So they split at the 50, one group of wide receivers and DBs going one way, the other group of wide receivers and DBs going one way, and then they run 4 lines on each side of the field going down the field. So you basically have to watch one side of the field, but the best way to do it, and I just don't do this because I want some clips to go back to, is I film a little bit, and then it's a good time to take pictures too. So there are like limited opportunities for somebody like me who's there to kind of cover the recruitment more than the eval piece. And Xavier McDonald had a couple reps that I was able to see, and it was just kind of like you see the flash, you see the potential of him. So I'm really intrigued to see how he develops as a senior. But Ole Miss is sitting in a solid spot here early on, but LSU is the school that he named his leader. He likes their wide receiver development and overall history at the position. So that'll be something for Ole Miss to overcome as the spring and summer rolls on. But it's worth noting his only visit that he took in January was to Ole Miss. Even during basketball, he made it over there. So good opportunity to keep one of Mississippi's best home. On the other end of the spectrum from Xavier McDonald, both in terms of player and in terms of recruitment, is Tylan Fortune. And he's out of League Central in Carthage. And I'm super high on him. I think he could be, and it's going to be one where it's always hard. This is where the testing piece is going to be interesting. I wonder what he ran. So basically, all this goes into a database. Colleges pay to read it and get it and things like that. We are sometimes able to get some of that. And Tylen Fortune is a hidden, a hidden fortune in Mississippi, in my opinion. He is somebody that has the ability to go up and get it. He's listed 6 foot, 170. I don't know if that is right compared to what he came in at the camp. But what I really like about him is that basketball background and nailing that piece of it when it comes to the football side of things is like so critical. Like receivers, I mean, that is just what the good ones do. They play basketball, they hoop, they play above the rim. They're able to just absolutely dominate in basketball. And it's a really nice indicator for colleges when you're looking to nail a wide receiver eval, because receiver is a position where you have to be a dog. You have to be wanting to go up and get it. And basketball helps showcase that so much, because if you're going up and you're putting people on posters, that's where these guys show their dogness. And you can show it on the football field as well. Don't get me wrong. But these wide receivers coming out of high school, coming out of these programs and going into colleges, the ones that step up for their basketball teams in high school and are beasts, those are ones that end up having a solid athletic advantage to pan out. And Tylen Fortune is that. Again, he's not 6'3" like Xavier McDonald. He doesn't have the insanely like long wingspan like Xavier McDonald, but he absolutely goes up and dunks the basketball. He makes plays in that way. And I was just really impressed with him overall. Ole Miss is sitting in a great spot. His recruitment has Ole Miss, Arkansas State, Louisiana Raging Cajuns involved. It's just very different from Xavier McDonald, who's a consensus, 4-star type of prospect. So really going to be interesting to see how that goes as he gets a rating from us. I was talking with Cody Belair, one of our scouts. I said, we got to get a rating on this guy. And I'm telling you, it, for me, kind of in that 4-star range. You know who he almost reminds me of is he could be a Deebo Samuel type. He could end up bulking up a little bit more, taking some jet sweeps, doing things like that. He's not far off from a running back build. He can just go up and get it at the wide receiver position. He had a nice day at the slot position. So really liked what Tylen Fortune did. He played a little bit outside too, and did some things well, but I think he can play all over, and that's also helpful. When you look at the linebacker position, this is one where trying to evaluate this in a camp setting, you're really just looking for athletes, and because running backs can run angle routes, they can run flat, turn it into wheel. These linebackers don't have help, so they're on an island. It's like running a slant if you're a wide receiver playing against DBs in these camps, because these DBs are playing so far off normally. So you just run a slant, get your win on your rep, and get it on tape. And, you can kind of almost hide in these camp settings. We want to see digs. We want to see goes. We want to see posts. We want to see double moves, see how you can separate the slant when guys are playing off is really kind of a cheat code, kind of like the angle route. Like a linebacker normally can play it a little bit more, straight up in a sense, because they have help in a game. In these camps, they don't. So they're so much more reactive, which again speaks to creating athleticism. But these running backs are in such an advantage. But the one who landed the MVP honors was TJ White out of Jackson Academy. It was a great day for the Jackson Academy crew. He's a 4-star prospect. He's a top 100 prospect for us at On3. We're the highest on him out of the industry. And Ole Miss is really, I think they have a little bit of work to do here. I believe it was Tennessee and a couple others that, he mentioned having official visits set to. And we'll have the full story up with him on Ole Miss Spirit here pretty soon. I'm probably going to drop that one today. But Florida State certainly really stepped up, I think, in this recruitment and has him sitting in a good position early on. But all that said, TJ White looks like Jacoby Hobson in the sense that Jacoby last year could come in and play now. TJ's got a little bit more true height to him, but a really, really good prospect, somebody who's really going to be, if Ole Miss keeps him home, maybe an instant impact type of player. So that'll be a really fun process to watch unfold. If Ole Miss gets him, I guess is the only way it'll be fun. But you have to respect guys that, I think want to take visits, want to take all their options into consideration and do their research. And I thought TJ White, when I spoke with him, really came off well, like very organized, understood the process and all those things. So looking forward to seeing how that recruitment plays out. And he really flashed athletically in camp and has great size. Lastly, but certainly not least, and usually this camp is actually one that is absolutely stacked with wide receivers, defensive backs. And there were some good defensive backs. There were some good safeties. The wide receiver group, I think, had a lot of young talent that really impressed me. And there were some local 26s in there as well from Louisiana that had good days. But one of the prospects at the cornerback position that really stood out to me is a name that most of you will recognize, and that's Hayward Howard Jr. We have him as a high 3-star on 3 just starting out. I think his camp performance showed he can run with players, he can make plays on the ball, and his frame checks the boxes. I mean, 6'2", 165 pounds, and oh, by the way, the son of Ole Miss former defensive lineman, Hayward Howard. Really enjoyed getting a chance to spend time with them, talk with them. We're gonna grab. It sounds like we're gonna go over to the Howard household and get some barbecue next time I'm down in New Orleans and cook and all those things. So really excited to get to spend some time with them. Hayward had a really nice day and was one of the top performers for me. We will see how things go with Ole Miss. This is going to be an interesting recruitment. And Hayward, just talking with me, told me, look, Ole Miss has been largely a portal school. So I want to see what they have in store for me, what they want to execute with me from a plan perspective. And that is, admirable and not necessarily not true. You know what I mean? Like Ole Miss has attacked the portal. And that is something where the coaches, as Lane Kiffin turns towards more high school recruiting, they're going to have to nail that piece of the discussion, that opportunity to say, hey, look, yes, we know we were a portal school. We're still going to do that. We're going to execute that plan, but we're going to be maybe a little bit more selective as we try to figure out the high school piece a little bit more. And we want to develop you. We want to put you in position to play early and be a guy at the cornerback position that can maybe step up for us early on. That's still a position that maybe long-term they need to have another strong class here to build that up for the long-term future of the program. But Hayward Howard has a good opportunity, I think, to be a early contributor at the college level, and that's what Ole Miss will need at that corner spot. So I was talking with Hayward Jr.'s dad, and he said they're definitely going to get over to Oxford and they're going to check it out, and that'll be a big moment for Ole Miss to maybe overcome some of the other suitors that he has, because he has a lot of really strong programs that are after him. So it'll be interesting to watch that recruitment unfold, and just taking a mature approach. He's not mad at it or anything like that. It's just a reality that Ole Miss is going to have to overcome that. So with that, before we get into our discussion around the transfer portal, I do want to remind you guys as well about our friends at My Perfect Franchise. Andy Ludicky is a franchise consultant. He is a franchise owner as well, and he can help you find that perfect franchise for you. You can go to myperfectfranchise.net or give him a call, 404-973-9901, or email him, Andy, A-N-D-Y, at myperfectfranchise.net. If you work with him on securing a franchise, he will donate money back to the Ole Miss Baseball Collective. So he wants to support college baseball. That's one of his big sports. If you work with him and you're an Ole Miss fan, he'll donate to the Baseball Collective. So really good chance to work with Andy Ludicky there on a franchise and kind of changing your life, taking over a franchise and finding the one that fits for you, your lifestyle, your time, money, all those things. It's a really good opportunity. I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine who mentioned, hey, I'm I'm wanting to break out. I've been a real estate broker. I'm cooked. I want to buy a franchise. I said, well, we're going to get you linked up with Andy Ludicky. So just have the conversation with him. It's absolutely free to do. It's consulting is free. So it's worth the call, and you'll find out some interesting things too. It's really quite something to, as you get to know a little bit more about it. Look, I hope to maybe one day own a franchise at some point. It'd be a cool little side investment or whatnot. So check them out, myperfectfranchise.net. All right, we'll wrap up here with this. Great camp, really enjoyed it. But at the same time, recruiting never sleeps, and Ole Miss went out and offered a grad transfer defensive back. And man, the transfer portal window starts later this year. It's in April, but grad transfers can get in and start getting contacted ahead of that portal window. And you'll start to see this. You'll start to see certain guys enter the portal. You'll start to see those grad transfers pop up. And Ashad Williams is one that Ole Miss extended an offer. The North Alabama defensive back from Russellville, from Russellville, Alabama. I got to get out of Under Armour New Orleans now. But from Russellville, Alabama, yes, the hometown of Chucky Mullins. For those of you that are watching, he is in the portal, and Ole Miss quickly offered him 6'2", 180 pounds. He had 10 pass breakups, which I saw somewhere on Twitter was a single season record for the FCS. I believe at North Alabama's FCS. North Alabama fans, but the North Alabama Lions, yes, FCS. Good, thought so. He has one year of eligibility remaining, 10 pass breakups this past year, 2 picks, and he has 54 career tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. And this is somebody that makes a ton of sense. And obviously from Russellville, those local ties or those ties with Ole Miss make a lot of sense. But also Ashad Williams, I talked with him on Friday. He grew up an Ole Miss fan. He grew up going to a lot of games, getting to Oxford and spending that time around the program. So this is one to keep an eye on very early on here. Arkansas has offered, UTEP has offered, Kansas is showing interest. There are a lot of different ways this one could certainly go with it being so early on in his recruitment, but really like just his mindset. He came up through the recruiting ranks without much interest. So he's really letting this process play out for his final year of eligibility, and we'll see where things go with him. But certainly keep an eye on Ole Miss early on. That is one school to keep an eye on with those ties to Russellville, and just seems like, early, but Ole Miss made a nice impression when they offered. So do you want to remind you guys to get to Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, sign up for just $1 for your first week, join the message board, had a lot of great discussion. Baseball this weekend, basketball is gearing up for the SEC tournament. Spring football is now 1 week away. So really excited to be there for that and the opening of spring practice under Lane Kiffin. And we will be tracking it all. Tons of recruiting scoops. So make sure you head over to the Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com. Appreciate Riverland Roofing, of course, as well. They sponsor the Talk of Champions. StatusJet.com. Head over there. Mention Ole Miss Spirit for a discount. Appreciate My Perfect Franchise and Roback as well. So with that, Ben Garrett and I will be back at it later this week, but hope you enjoyed this live edition of the Flagship, and we will catch you guys at the Ole Miss Spirit.